Meeting of the Brockton City Council Finance Committee for Monday, May 3rd, 2021 is called to order. I recognize a quorum. This meeting is held in accordance with Governor Charlie Baker's signed executive order, which permits a legislative body to meet remotely as long as we provide an opportunity for the public to observe our deliberations, discussions, and votes. The public may view this on Brockton Community Access as well as on Facebook Live. Madam Clerk, would you call the first agenda item, please?
Appointment of Jacqueline Murphy of 138 Torrey Street to the Diversity Commission for a 3-year term ending April 2024. Invited Jacqueline Murphy.
Councilors, I've spoken to Ms. Murphy, and unfortunately, she has been sick for the past week. We can postpone this to the next FinCom or take any action that the body deems appropriate.
Move to postpone to the next Finance Committee meeting.
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded to postpone to the next Finance Committee meeting. All those in favor? All those opposed? Postponed. Item number 2.
Appointment of Samantha Ambroise of 10 Kingman Street to the Planning Board for a 5-year term ending April 2026. Invited Samantha Ambroise.
Good evening, Samantha. Please step forward and welcome. Relax. As I told you, if you'd like to make a brief opening statement, please do so.
Good evening, Mr. Counselor, fellow counselors. My name is Attorney Samantha Ambrose, and I am requesting appointment to the Planning Board on this evening. As grounds, I am a resident over at 10 Kingman Street. I've been a resident of 10 Kingman Street for the past 17 years. I've been a resident and owner of that property. I grew up in Brockton, and I was educated here. Currently, I work for the Public Defender Agency, CPCS, located here at 221 Main Street. Some of you I recognize, some of you I've practiced with as well. Specifically, I represent clients who are indigent. Indigent clients are clients who've been appointed representation because they cannot afford representation on their own account. One important issue that made me apply for this position or seek appointment to this position is the idea of climate change. I believe that climate defense is client defense. Climate change is a very real issue. You see it on every commercial that you watch. You hear about it on the news. You hear about it on NPR and the like. We see it with the winds. We see it when there are floods. We see it when there are catastrophes. When catastrophes occur, when disasters occur, there are gas spikes, there are food hikes. People cannot afford natural disasters. Those natural disasters necessarily impact my clients, this community, and you and I. Being appointed to this board, ladies and gentlemen, will allow me to help fight this very real issue of climate change. For these reasons, ladies and gentlemen, I am requesting appointment to this board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, councilors? Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Samantha, how are you tonight?
Good evening.
It's great to see you again. So, Samantha, just wondering if you had any experience in the planning, looking at plans, looking at architectural plans, stuff like that. Do you have any experience looking at such plans in your past?
You know, I do not have experience in terms of looking at specific plans, but what I do have experience in is understanding Mass General laws, understanding regulations, reading regulations, policy, and practice. I'm very familiar with it. I am trained in this, and this is what I do.
Great. I think you'll make a fine addition to that board, and we appreciate you stepping forward and serving your city. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you for serving on the planning board, for even coming forward and wanting to serve your city. And even though you just stated that you don't have experience in reading plans, which that does involve the planning board, I am sure that you will learn very quickly, and you, as you said, you follow procedures, and guidelines, and being an attorney, you know many of the laws. So I have faith that you're going to do an amazing job, and it's great to have a woman serving as well on the planning board. So I just wanted to thank you. And if there aren't any comments, I will make a motion to send this favorably back to the full city council.
All right, I think Councilor Rodriguez and then Councilor Nicastro.
I think she was first.
Councilor Nicastro, ladies first.
Thank you. Good evening, Attorney Ambrose.
Good evening.
Thank you for appearing this evening, and thank you for your willingness to serve. You surely know Planning Board is a 5-year commitment
I do
in the
understand.
city. Okay, I served on Planning Board for 5 years, not too long ago, and here I sit today, so who knows, it may be your turn in 5 years. The Planning Board is a terrific place to learn about the city. You will have to be looking at site plan review, you'll be reviewing applications for subdivision control approval, and also applications for people to go back to the Zoning Board of Appeals. There is a terrific group called Citizen Planner out of UMass Boston that holds very inexpensive but worthwhile seminars, and I'd be happy to send you that information. I think I have your email address here. The Planning Board at this time meets monthly, the first Tuesday of the month. It's very interesting, takes a little while to get up to it. You're an experienced lawyer. I suspect you'll do great. And I just wanted to say I'm grateful to you for your willingness to serve.
Madam Councilor, if I may just address that, thank you so very much. You know, I'm eager to learn. I'm a hard worker. I'm intelligent, and I will do the job.
Sure, and if you have questions, call me.
Yes, I will. Thank you
Okay,
so much.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rodriguez.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Samantha, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Mr. Chairman, I met Samantha a little while ago, and her enthusiasm in terms of helping and doing things for the city was basically something that we just couldn't pass by, in terms of not forwarding her name for some sort of an appreciation, in terms of appreciating that your devotion and enthusiasm deserves to be in a place. And I think as a planning member and being a lawyer and by profession, it doesn't matter how much experience you come in with. Experience is something you can pick up, and I'm sure you'll have absolutely no problems in picking that up. So for that, I'm going to second the motion that Councilor Shirley Azak actually did. So I'm going to second that motion.
Thank you, Mr.
The
Councilor.
motion has been made and properly seconded to recommend favorably. If there's no further debate, all those in favor? All those opposed? Unanimously recommended favorably.
Thank
So
you.
next Monday will be the actual formal confirmation vote, as I mentioned to you before the meeting. So
Yes, please. Thank you.
thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, item number 3.
Appointment of George Vega of 40 Goldfinch Drive to the Library Board of Trustees for a 3-year term ending April 2024. Invited George Vega.
Is Mr. Vega here? Jorge Vega? Councilors, do you want to hold this for a bit, to see if he appears?
I would move to postpone this to the end of the meeting, and if Mr. Vega is not here by the end of the meeting, I will make another motion to postpone it to the next Finance Committee meeting.
Second.
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Postponing to the end of the meeting. All those opposed? It is a vote. Item number 4.
Ordered acceptance and expenditure of the total grant award in the amount of $190,596 from the Executive Office of Elder Affairs Fiscal Year 21 Formula Grant to the City of Brockton Council on Aging Fiscal Year 21 Formula Grant. Invited Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, Janice Fitzgerald, Director, Council on Aging.
Councilors, I communicated with Ms. Fitzgerald today, and she is sick and unable to attend this evening. Mr. Clarkson is here. This is an annual grant, no match. And with that, Mr. Clarkson wants to add to that. Please do.
Stole my thunder. Mr. Chairman, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Any questions?
Happy to answer any questions, though. This is
Councilor Azak.
recurring and no match.
Thank you, Mr. Clarkson. So no match, but it's $596,000. So it's a lot of money. Is this, does it need to be used for anything specific? What's it for?
The Director of the Council on Aging informs me that because it's an annual recurring grant, it is used for ongoing regular expenses of the Council on Aging, including salaries, program expenses, some building expenses. So anything you would normally consider part of the COA budget, it really supplements the money that the city uses to fund the Council on Aging.
Which is great, so it's not restricted. That's-
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Move to recommend favorably?
Second.
Been a motion made and seconded to recommend favorably. No further debate. All those in favor? All those opposed? Recommended favorably. On item number 5, Councilor Ianieri? Councilor Ianieri?
Yes.
Would you
Yes.
take the gavel on item number 5? As a member of the retirement system, I have a $30 investment in if this is approved.
Just 30.
And knowing politics, it will go from 30 to 300,000 before we leave the meeting, so
I can imagine there's an attorney in Ward 1 listening.
thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Madam Clerk, could you please read number 5?
Ordered that the City Council authorize the acceptance of a Mass General Law, Chapter 32, Section 103J, to approve the acceptance by the Brockton Retirement Board of an increase of $1,000 in the maximum base amount upon which COLA is calculated for pension payments for fiscal '21 and each year thereafter. Invited Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, Jean Martineau, Executive Director, Brockton Retirement Board.
Mr. Clarkson, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So, I did provide, as always, a memo to you outlining some of the finance-related items on tonight's agenda. I did provide a narrative related to this item, but I'd like to just briefly explain what you're being asked to do tonight. It's to, and I provided a copy of a letter from Jean Martineau that she sent to me that I think succinctly and very professionally outlines the request before you tonight. And so, as she notes, this is just, you're being asked to increase the cost, the basis of the cost of living allowance for the retirees. The cost, the additional cost to the city, some $2.50 per month per retiree, is already programmed in to the Retirement Board's assessment for the city. So we're not asking you to appropriate any additional money. The request that will be before you next month in the FY22 budget includes this amount. So I also sent you that that Ms. Martineau had provided a spreadsheet that demonstrates what the COLA basis is for many retirement systems throughout the Commonwealth. And as you can see, most of them have a number that is actually higher than this. So we're actually asking you just to make this modest adjustment to keep the Brockton retirees at a pace with the rest of the Commonwealth, but actually will still be on the low end. So I think it's a very fiscally responsible and modest request that would provide some cost of living allowance to our retirees.
Move to recommend favorably.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to move favorably to the full city council. There's no other questions to be had. All in favor? Opposed? So be it. We'll be heard at the next city council meeting. And I do want to just recognize our former chief financial officer, Mr. Condon, is in the audience this evening. I appreciate him for being here, and I know that he plays a vital role on the retirement board and has since he left here as an employee. So we're glad to have him still. Mr. Clarkson, was there a Scribner's error somewhere? That's what the president was mentioning to me. There could be a Scribner's error.
I just discussed that with Ms. Martineau, and so the way it was read is, I think, is different than what was provided. So we'll make sure that for your meeting next week,
Okay.
that's corrected.
Okay, so it'll be corrected? Okay. All right, very good. Thank you.
Item number 5, Madam Clerk.
6.
On 6.
6, I'm sorry.
Ordered, acceptance and expenditure of the total grant award in the amount of $275,000 from the Department of Housing and Community Development grant to the City of Brockton Mayor's Office. Invited Mayor Robert Sullivan, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, Robert Jenkins, Executive Director, Brockton Redevelopment Authority.
Good evening, Mr. Clarkson.
Good evening
Please.
again, Mr. Chairman, and my colleague, Mr. Jenkins, is also here. As I explained to you in the memo, this is a new grant program through the Commonwealth, and Robert can explain it in greater detail, but there is no match, and so this is a sum of money that will assist the Brockton Redevelopment Authority in making improvements to multifamily housing throughout the city.
Welcome, Mr. Jenkins.
Good evening, councilors. As our CFO, Troy Clarkson, has stated, this is a new grant from Department of Housing and Community Development. At this point in time, it's for gateway cities only, which Brockton is one. This actually works well, what I call our trifecta for rehabbing houses in the city of Brockton. Currently, we run a program, CDBG, federal funded for just singles and 2 families. These funds will allow us to do 3 and 4 families. The city of Brockton has a number of 3-family neighborhoods, which honestly, under our federal program, it's just too expensive for us to kind of do under the regular CDBG. This will allow us to go into those 3 and 4 bedrooms, as well as increase the income limit to 110%, as opposed to the 80%, which is under CDBG. When I say trifecta, this goes very well with our current rehab program, the lead program, and now the multifamily program. At this point in time, I'll take on any questions.
Councilor Razak.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Jenkins.
Good evening.
Thank you for all you do with you're always here with grants, which is great, and we love new grants and new funding. But my question to you is, how are we getting this out to the residents? I know sometimes residents don't find out about these programs, so how would
We usually
residents
have
find
it
out?
on our website. We may run an ad. This is not a lot of money. If you know how much, for instance, our regular 3 families, and when we cut it off, it's usually about $60,000 in rehab costs. And that can be anything from electrical to roofs to plumbing, just upgrading, and actually in some cases, a lot of cases I should say, there've been a number of cases where we had to go in and actually either tear off the porch. A lot of our 3-family have back decks, porches. We usually have to tear them off because they're too expensive to fix. Getting the word out is the best way to do this is always word of mouth. Councilor Castro brought up, we had a very good conversation and a stunning revelation. Here's the problem with us getting the word out is that we never have enough money. I'll go to the mayor and he'll set aside $400,000 or $300,000 in CDBG. We'll go through that in less than a year. Even with COVID, we went through that money, and not all of it, but a good portion of it, even with COVID. So getting the word out is usually just by word of mouth. Word of mouth on our website.
What is your website, just for people at home, so they can...
BrocktonRedevelopmentAuthority.com.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Councilor Rodriguez, and then Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Jenkins, you said that these grants are going to average around $60,000 per?
I would say for 3 families, that's what they've been averaging, and we've had cut them off because our regular program, counselor, is $37.5 max. That's for $35,000 for a single, $37.5 for a 2-family. When they get up to 3 families, this is why we don't do 3 families. They're very expensive to rehab. In a city that is aging, and we have a population, as many of you know, that is aging in place. We have a lot of elderly people who are living in 3 families that just can't afford to fix these 3 families, and some 4s. So that's just an average.
So the decision's already been made that you're going to do $60,000 versus something smaller?
We got to go in and counsel. We have to go in and do a rehab assessment. I'm just telling you what the average has been.
But would we not be better off just making the smaller amount so that it actually goes into like some sort of a grant? So, because you know what scares the daylights out of me again, Mr. Jenkins? And I'm going to bring it up.
Yep,
You know what's coming, right?
I do.
Those that really need this help will never see it, because that's the per usual situation here in the city, and you know what I'm talking about.
I do, Counselor, but you also know, working at the Redevelopment Authority, we try to help those that are most vulnerable,
Not true.
and, we do try.
Oh, no.
We do try.
Let me just finish my point, then you can go on and stuff. We know for a fact that individuals that are non-English speaking, don't speak it as well as they should, can't get into the website, don't really have a computer, are usually left outside of this whole process. And we know that. And you know what? No fault of your own, but that's just the situation that we live in. And often we're getting calls from people saying, look, my roof is falling apart, my porch is falling off. You know, is there something I can do for the city? And I've referred quite a few of those people to you. And it gets up there, there's no funds or anything to help them out because it's all gone. So my whole thing, you know, even if it comes from on a form of recommendation in the sense, this is where less is actually more. Instead of giving one person $60,000 to fix whatever that fixing might be, we'll be better off giving 3 people $20,000 each, where they can leverage it with their own funds from somewhere, or they can borrow it from someplace else to make it work. Because it, to me, you know, you're feeding one person, but in this particular instance here, we're looking to feed a lot more mouths in a sense. So the more individuals, the more homeowners we can, it's not just the number, it's just that they start having a little more faith in the system, thinking that the system is a little more fair, even if they're getting $1 out of it, whereas they haven't seen it in the past. And we know that because some of these homeowners in this community have not seen. They're not as in tune with what goes on a regular basis to qualify for some of these programs. So I think it'd be better off as a city to make it a little bit more in terms of the number of participants and a little less of the amount of money that we give out.
The challenge with that is that usually you can't bring it up to code in a 3-family for 20 grand. If we could, we would have added it to our CDBG program. The fact of the matter is a lot of these properties are just, how should I say, you can't, for 20,000, 30,000, 3 families, in most cases, you're talking $10,000, it won't do it. And that's been our experience. We can demonstrate and show you the numbers. Due to lead paint, due to code violations, you just can't do it. So unfortunately, for the federal program, you do it all or you do nothing.
But this is a state grant.
Once again, it's $275,000. And once
So why
again,
in God's name would you not chop it up into like 10, at least 10
allow me to
recipients?
finish. Like I said, you won't be able to bring it up to code. And once again, even though it's state money, we're running it concurrently with our CDBG program and our lead program, which is a federally funded program. So I understand your logic. Working implication, we find that just doesn't work. And here's the thing. When people do come, it's first come, first served, you get on your list. I don't care what language you speak, okay?
But I got to know that you're doing it
Again,
first.
Let me finish. When you come to our office and you get on the waiting list, it's a matter of going down the list. And yes, sometimes we run out of money by usually May this time. We run out of money. But then I'll go to the mayor and say, Mayor, we need to replenish this, and we're working on our CDBG now. We'll replenish it. Hopefully.
Don't be blaming the mayor on this particular one, because has not, you know, my whole thing is
I get what you're saying. Unfortunately,
divide it up and
Council-
help these poor souls that need their porches fixed up. That's all I'm saying.
Let's, as you gentlemen go back and forth, let's let one person finish and then the other one come in, please.
As I was trying to indicate, that is very logical. It works on paper. It's good to work on your head. Do less, do more. You kind of think you get a bigger impact, but what you do is you put a person in a position where they're still not code compliant. And I can show you several examples. You want to come to my office? I got several of them. More than several.
Mr. Jenkins, I'm not saying that, you know, you're wrong about this. What I'm saying is that we've got plenty of properties in this city that could benefit from a $20,000 grant versus fixing 1 or 2 properties. I'm just saying that it could take the edge off for the homeowners whose porch are falling apart. You drive around the city, you see many of them with caution tapes on them because they're falling apart. $20,000 can fix those porches versus, pumping $60,000 to $70,000 where, it's family and friends that will get those and the rest of the community will not. That's what I'm saying.
I hear what you're saying. I wish it was that simple. I wish it would work that way. Unfortunately, when they go in and you see a porch that's taped around, it's usually just not the porch. And $20,000, if it's a two-family, may get you a porch, but a three-family with electrical, lighting, and code, $30,000 is usually what you're talking to replace a three-family or four-family porch. I wish I had some rehab or someone from the building department here. We've done some.
But I'm saying to leverage
I get
the
it.
funds out with, if I was a homeowner and I'm being offered $20,000 for a job that's $50,000, it means that all I have to do is come up with 30 versus coming up with a full 50. That's what I'm saying.
I get it. Unfortunately, the population we serve and the people that we serve, Counselor, with all due respect, they usually are unbankable. There was a time when property was underwater. They're usually unbankable, and a lot of times these are elderly folks. We're just trying to make their house safe, to be quite honest, and get it back up to code. I get what you're saying.
It seems like we're not
can
going to go
talk.
anywhere. I'm just going to leave it here.
Yeah,
Thank you,
we can
Mr.
talk,
Chairman.
and we have.
Counselor Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Mr. Jenkins. Just a quick question. These monies, for those who qualify for the program, we give that out as a grant, or is this a loan?
It's going to match our program. Our program is a zero interest, no payment loan for the duration of the property. When you sell it or refinance, you pay those funds back, or we'll subordinate. In most cases, we subordinate. Once again, because of the population, the people we serve, we subordinate. But it is looked at, and the state looks at it as a loan as well. They would like us to do 20-year loans, but what's the difference when the population we serve?
Is there any interest on that? No.
Zero interest.
No
No payments.
And then when we recoup those funds, they go
Right
right
back
back
into
into the same thing? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
Sure.
Anyone else? Councilor Nicastro?
Thank you. Good evening,
Councilor
Mr.
Martin.
Good
Jenkins.
evening, Counselor.
We speak again.
We speak again.
And so I note from reviewing the scope of services attached to the order tonight that this project is limited to funding amounts of up to $35,000 per unit and $75,000 per property unless there's a waiver for the contractor.
Correct.
So if the grant is for $275,000, you really can't do a lot of properties. But certainly it's better than none.
Here's why I say trifecta, because we can put lead money in. We can put, there's a program that's attached to the lead that's, it's for like if you have asthma, mold, and it's just a straight out grant. But that's part of the lead program. And then we also have our CDBG. So that's why I call it a trifecta.
Sure.
Because we can do, as Councilor Rodriguez was pointing out, for those who we get on our list, we can do more. I wouldn't say less, but we can do more because we have these three pots of money.
Okay. And so, as you just mentioned to Counselor Thompson, so this becomes a mortgage or a lien against the
Becomes a
property.
lien.
But you do subordinate if someone goes to refinance.
Absolutely. We'll
And it sits there forever? Is it ever forgiven?
never forgiven.
Okay. But it just requires repayment when
If
the
you
house, when the
refinance.
property is sold?
Or sold, exactly.
And there's no interest charged?
No interest,
And no fee or anything?
no fee. That's
Wow.
a good idea though, but no fee.
That's terrific. That's really terrific. And, I mean, it's not enough money with prices. Someone was telling me over the weekend that lumber prices have increased something like 175%,
Yeah.
Some
I've heard that
ridiculous
crazy
number
as
lately.
well. Right,
but it's better than nothing. Thank you very much.
my pleasure.
Thank you,
Councilor
Mr. Chair.
Monahan?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Jenkins.
Good evening, Councilor.
You said that most people find out about the programs by word of mouth. So where are you finding the people coming from? Where are they saying they're hearing about this? Because it is a problem now with, I'll finish this. We have no radio station. The paper, forget it. So you could get to the Cape Verdean and Haitian radio stations and give them some information on that because they have a big following. I've seen some of that, but there really isn't a lot. I mean, we're so advanced now, and we get probably less communication other than Facebook than we have. Do you have anything on Facebook?
We do. On Facebook, we get people from the Cape Verdean Association. We get a lot of people from the mayor's office, the Board of Health, churches, BIC. If you're in the community, there's really, how should I say, regardless of what language you speak,
Yep.
if you own a house in Brockton, there's really no reason that I can think of, other than that you have a closed door, that you don't know about the redevelopment authority and the homeowner rehab program.
Okay, so you're pretty certain that most people that could use this are hearing about it possibly?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'm
You're not?
never,
Okay.
just like Council Rodriguez, I can go around the city and I'll see tape on porches and I'll drop off my card, or I'll have my rehab guy go out there and knock on the door.
Yeah.
We do what
Seems
we
like the
can.
churches are more, probably is a good idea more than anything. I think more people are going to church in the communities that can use them. If you
Sure.
could get the information out to them, that'd probably be a good idea.
Or even their banks. We
Yeah.
talk to the housing partnership and
Yep,
we tell them as well, and they know about the program. And if you go to Harbor One, Northeastern Savings Bank, or even Eastern Bank, they have information on our programs.
okay, thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
Motion to recommend favorably back to the full city
Second.
council.
Been a motion made and properly seconded. Just one question to you, Mr. Jenkins. Any chance there will be a second round of grants?
We'll keep our fingers crossed. The state's getting a lot of COVID fundings. The city just received, and I don't know if the mayor wants me to announce it, we have our home funds, the first time we've ever gotten over $1 million, and we got $2 million. We have $2 million that's committed for home, which is new construction, residential housing, brick and mortar. But that's the first time. Usually it's $400,000 or $500,000, and we wait a couple of years to build up enough to put towards a development. So
Oh, thank you. We can have you come back and talk about that, you and the mayor. There's been a motion made and properly seconded to recommend favorably. All those in favor? All those opposed? It is a vote.
thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 7.
Ordered that in order to reduce interest costs, the city treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to issue refunding bonds at one time or from time to time pursuant to the Mass General Law, Chapter 44, subsection 21A, or pursuant to any other enabling authority to refund all or any portion of the city's general obligation bonds outstanding as of the date of the adoption of this order, and that the proceeds of any refunding bonds issued pursuant to this vote shall be used to pay the principal, redemption premium, and interest on the bonds of the city to be refunded, in cost of issuance of the refunding bonds, and that the mayor and the city treasurer are each authorized to execute such documents as may be necessary or desirable to carry out this transaction, including one or more refunding trust agreements with the bank or trust company. Further ordered that the city treasurer is authorized to file an application with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Municipal Finance Oversight Board to qualify under the General Law, Chapter 44A, in any and all bonds or notes of the city authorized by this vote, and to provide such information and execute such documents as the Municipal Finance Oversight Board of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts may require. Invited Mayor Robert Sullivan, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, and Martin Brophy, Treasurer Collector.
Mr. Mayor, would you like to speak? Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the board. What's going to be discussed tonight is germane to bonding and the city's ability to bond. We had a conversation, very successful, with our bond rating agency, which is Moody's and Standard & Poor's, the other day, in terms of the $98 million authorization that this body did. One of the things as mayor that I was concerned about is I don't want to jeopardize our bonding in any way. Interest rates are at an all-time low. We'd be foolish not to take advantage of this. Moody's and Standards concurred with what CFO has been telling me, what Mr. Brophy, the treasurer, has been telling me as well. So they're going to be able to give some more information tonight, but I think it's going to be extremely helpful to the legislative body. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Clarkson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So normally I'm up here asking you for the authorization to borrow money or to spend money, tonight I have the pleasure of asking you to authorize refunding, what in the private world, what we would call for our homes refinancing. So what essentially, the request before you, what it means is that we will refinance existing debt and in the process save an estimated $400,000. And so this is because we have some existing debt that because of the low interest rates, we can refinance and save that money. I did provide to you earlier today information from Hilltop Securities, our finance advisor, that explains specifically where this debt came from. It was a little over $3 million in debt from back in 2015. Just making sure that. Yes. So the request is pretty straightforward. One administrative note for you. As you know, typically when you authorize borrowing, it's an extensive process with significant public posting and meeting requirements. As I noted to you in my certification letter, because this is a refunding, it does not carry those same posting and meeting requirements. So should you agree tonight to move it back to the City Council, your subsequent vote satisfies the process requirement and will not require any further posting or meeting requirements. Marty Brophy, the Treasurer Collector, is here as well. We've collaborated on this. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Mr. Brophy, anything to add, or has Mr. Clarkson covered it?
No, Mr. Clarkson actually covered it. And part of the reason we don't have to do anything is when we initially borrow and have that authorization, we have to meet a certain legal requirements, and that's part of the advertising and the third vote, and a list of other, requirements by bond counsel. Once we've met that, we've met it. So refunding it, it's a two-vote process, really.
Councilor Castro?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Clarkson. As we briefly discussed earlier, I'm all for this. This is a great idea to refund our bonds and to save some money. That's always a good idea. But I noticed that the language says at one time or from time to time. And as I mentioned to you briefly, I'm more than a little uncomfortable with authorizing from time to time refunding bonds. And I would prefer that you come back to us if you want to do more bonds in the future. And I would also like to get a list from you. Maybe it was attached to your agency review. I don't have it. I might have left it on the printer, of exactly what we're refunding.
I did provide that to you, Counselor, in the email earlier today, but it is a pretty lengthy document, so I'm happy to review it in detail for sure. But these are school projects originally for the Brookfield School, the Ashfield School, and the Gilmore Childhood Center roof repairs. And so those were the three projects that total the amount that was borrowed and the amount that we're refunding now. And to your first point, I'll certainly confer with the Treasurer Collector, but if that language from time to time is stricken from the order, I don't believe that will negatively impact our ability to refund this particular order.
Okay. Okay, do you want to confer now? Because I'll make a motion to amend.
Councilors, we did this once before. It was actually quite a while ago. Basically, it's for anything that we have permanent bonding on at the moment. So going forward, in most bonds, you can't refund until probably close to 10 years that it's out. So this is not something that we can just go and do. It's kind of a one-time line in the sand. If we try and do it again, the line moves. So if we think 2 years from now, there's something to borrow, we come back again. This isn't a permanent, you can keep refunding and refunding. It's just a one-time shot with this order.
So, Mr. Brophy, then you don't need that language from time to time?
Counsel, you could strike that language, because
Okay.
anything in the future, we have to come back before the
Right.
body anyhow.
Right,
Yep.
okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. So I'll wait if anyone else wants to,
Counselor Thompson, I know, would like to speak.
Okay.
Counselor Thompson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kind of just piggybacking on the end of that conversation, is there currently any ongoing effort to identify other bonds in which we can refund?
Yes, of course. I mean, one of the reasons why we have our finance advisor is that they constantly make recommendations to us if debt is available for refunding.
And I heard something about a 10-year mark. What is the standard to be able to do this type of rebonding?
Well, Marty described it correctly to you. So generally, and this is, I'm going to speculate here, but it's more of an industry standard because the bond purchasers want to be assured that they're going to get the return on their investment. So when the financing is structured, generally in public finance, not just here in Brockton, it's structured in a way so that it limits the amount of time in which you can refund, so that the bond investors have the ability to get a return on their investment. And so, and some public debt is not eligible for refunding. And so generally, what a finance advisor like Hilltop will do is notify us, as they did in this instance, when debt is coming up that's eligible for refunding. They'll let us know, and then we can initiate the legislative process to go through it.
Well, it's good that they're reviewing that constantly and helping save the city
Indeed,
some
yes,
money.
absolutely.
That's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Clarkson.
Counselor Ianieri?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Clarkson, just so I can keep in my mind straight, what we're bonding on are those 4 or 5 facilities that have been mentioned with the school department, that's what this bond is all about right here?
Right.
Okay.
So it's existing debt that you approved several years ago.
Right.
But we're able to now go in and, to use a colloquial term, refinance it and then save a little over $400,000 over the remaining life of the loan.
And these were projects that were done, am I correct?
Yes.
They were done, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
And those are real dollars, by the way.
Real
Those are
dollars
real
that were-
savings in our principal and interest payments over the next several years.
Okay. I move for a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. On the motion, Counselor Nicastro, anything further?
On the motion, I'd like to amend this order to strike the language from time to time, which is at the beginning of the 3rd sentence.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion to amend, properly made and seconded. We vote on the amendment first. All those in favor of the amendment to strike that language? All those opposed? The amendment is adopted.
Thank you.
We now vote on a favorable recommendation as amended. Mr. Clarkson, just for the public, we borrowed certain amounts of money, bonded them. They were at a certain percentage. We pay that in our bond debt every year. You're simply refinancing that amount of money, that collateral amount of money, at a lower interest rate. We're going to save, I think you said, about $400,000, and new bonds will be issued, but they will be at that lower percentage rate, which again is a savings to the city.
That's exactly correct. It is very similar to what I suspect with interest rates where they are, Mr. Chairman. Many people in this room or watching have refinanced their home debt, their mortgage, to take advantage of those interest rates. And so public agencies do the same thing.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion as amended? All those opposed? Recommended favorably. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 8.
Resolved that the mayor, building inspector James Pluff, and state representative Michelle Dubois come before the finance committee to discuss the possibility of the city acquiring the Massasoit Conference Center for use as a multi-generational community center. Invited Mayor Robert Sullivan, state representative Michelle Dubois, Megan Bridges, city solicitor, and James Pluff, building superintendent.
Councilors, Mr. Plouffe notified me early today he has a scheduling conflict and could not appear this evening. And Councilor Thompson, you filed this, so technically you speak first, or you can defer to the mayor, whichever you prefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I'll defer to both the mayor and Representative Dubois and make a statement after.
All right. Mr. Mayor, again,
Chairman,
welcome.
good evening. I want to thank Councilor Thompson for filing this resolve. Since the property in question is owned by DCAM, which is an agency of the state, I'm going to respectfully have State Representative Michelle Dubois, who serves this district, speak before me, if there's no objection.
Thanks, Sam.
Good evening, Representative Dubois.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I've been fully vaccinated, so I've just taken off my mask just to let everybody know. My name is Michelle Dubois. I'm a state representative here in Brockton. I want to thank Councilor Thompson very much for putting this resolve before. It's so exciting to be back here with all of you, or with some of you that I've served with in the past. I really enjoyed my time here on the City Council, and I really appreciate all the work each and every one of you put into making our city a better place, and I'm grateful for that. So, as you all know, as we all know, legislating is not always easy. And what I am here to discuss today with all of you should not be hard, but as it turns out, it's not easy either. The topic of the former Christos Conference Center on Crescent Street getting that property for an intergenerational community center is what we're here to discuss this evening. This is harder than I think it should be, but it was no harder than the environmental justice bill that I was able to get passed this year after 6 years of effort at the State House. And it is no harder than the money that we were able to deliver and that we're delivering for public education here in Brockton and across the state. And all of that took many years, and it took a lot of advocacy and consensus building and coalition building. And that's what I'm here tonight to do with each and every one of you, consensus building and coalition building around this goal. And so what I've passed out to each and every one of you tonight is a little map that shows, and for tonight's purposes, technically, this 6 acres of land is more than 2 parcels. It's many parcels. But for this evening, I'm going to talk about the Cristo former conference center parcel, and you'll see on the map, it is it's circled by blue marker. That's the Christo's Conference Center parcel. That's a little, around a half an acre. And the broader parcel, which is in the gray area, is where the old Christo's restaurant used to be that was torn down and is now a parking lot. It's where the old movie theater used to be. If you can go way back to Karate Kid days, that's when that place was open. The last movie I saw there was what is it called, Terminally Blonde, or Unnaturally Smart Blonde, you know, with the comedian. So there was Legally Blonde. Thank you. That was a long time ago. And then the parking that a lot of people think is part of the care facility, but actually is part of this 6-acre lot. So tonight, I'm not talking about the whole 6-acre lot. And I think that's what's caused a lot of confusion, because people think that, and it is mistakenly being put out there, that I am asking that the whole 6-acre lot be handed over to the city for no fee for a community center that will pay no taxes. And that is inaccurate. The DCAM owns all 6 acres. I am asking that the half acre, that's half acre, so there's still 5.5 acres of development to be done, that the conference center sits on, be granted to the city for a nominal fee. And then we see that the building inspector has looked through, the building commissioner, and sees the building, reports it is in pristine condition. And so the first thing I wanted to really get clear tonight is that I'm just talking about a half acre that the parcel's on. The second thing I would like to get clear tonight is that transferring of land at the state level through legislation is, it happens hundreds of times. I've had long conversations, hour-long meetings with House counsel at the State House around this. He has said there are literally hundreds of pieces of legislation that have transferred state-held land to municipalities, nonprofits, and businesses for zero and nominal fee. I've just given 5 that he passed along to me here, but I could get countless for you to review. It is all within our power legally to do so. I know that there is some confusion and talking points out there that it isn't, but it is. It's legal. Next, I would like to talk about how in the last 5 years, in the last 4 years, we've had 5 different presidents of Massasoit. If you remember, Dr. Wall retired, and then Bill Mitchell was an interim president for a certain amount of time, and then they hired Gina Glickman, who stayed 1.5 years, and then they appointed Brenda Moleaf as an interim, and they just announced that we are luckily going to be getting Raymond DePasquale as the new president of Massasoit Community College. I attentively watched the interviews of every single person that was being proposed as a potential president for Massasoit that were public, and I was so impressed with Ray's interview because he stressed not once, not twice, but 3 times the incoming president, that his goal is to work in partnership with the legislature and the state representatives and state senator that represent the area of Massasoit in order to improve the college and the community. So I have a lot of hope that on his first day, I'm going to be outside his door with muffins and talk to him about this parcel, this half-acre parcel of land, and my goals. And I'm really hoping that he's going to be on board, because once he gets on board, the sky's the limit, right? So I just wanted to show that, so each and every one of you have that information for your own education. I also included an email between Gina Glickman and I, the former president, that shows that she wasn't interested in any type of community partnership on this parcel for your edification. And then the other part, because it is a complicated project that sometimes comes up as a block to having a community center, as well as the development of this parcel of land, is they say that there's a $40 million project on campus that, if you think way back, why we even purchased the Crystal's lot in the first place, the state, was to put a multi-million-dollar, $30 million life science center on the 6 acres. And that was when DeVal Patrick was leaving. And we were all excited. I mean, every single person in the city was excited. And CNA is our #1 employment here in Brockton, so getting a life science center would have been wonderful. But Governor Baker came in, and, you know, to his credit, or to his point, he said, I'd rather have the project be on the campus, which I respect. And it's going to be a $47 million project. They're going to take the life science center, they're going to switch it with the liberal arts, and both of those buildings are going to be retrofitted and rehabilitated. And then, just for your reference, I gave you the schedule of what's going to happen at the intersection, because that also comes up, because there's a whole nother project under the tip. So, all the paperwork that I've handed out to you explained. The purpose of me being here tonight is to just educate you, talk to you, communicate with you and the public about this wonderful idea of having an intergenerational community center at the Christos Conference Center. The bill that I have drafted, that I'm working with Senator Brady on, actually transfers the parcel, the half-acre conference center parcel, to the city of Brockton, and does not say it has to be an intergenerational community center. You know, with legislation, things change. So when the sausage is being made and the legislation is going through the House and the Senate, there's a chance that someone may say, we would like you to enumerate in the legislation that transfer would be used for an intergenerational community center. But as you can see on many of the examples I've given you, many times they've transferred much larger parcels of land for a nominal fee to municipalities with without saying what it's going to be used for. So that is really going to be, the mayor is interested in intergenerational community center. I am interested in intergenerational community center. The president of the Senate, which I was so excited about last week, came out and announced, Karen Spilka, that she is interested in intergenerational community centers and supports in our Commonwealth. There's money coming down for this type of supports, connecting people to what they need, mental health, community programs. She's the Senate president, and it's one of her #1 priorities are these intergenerational community centers. She talks about it being an expansion of the family community center that we were lucky enough to have here in Brockton that came in a few years ago. So it's along that line of mental health. So it's like we're at a precipice of a very, and it only comes around every once in a while, where we have this land. The state owns this land. The state paid $1.5 million to purchase the restaurant from the family that owned it. They then paid another $1.5 million to tear that restaurant down. So we're into it. $3 million higher ed bond money has been used for this purpose. So we're committing in every single draft of legislation that has been appeared to give $3 million from the sale of the 5.5 acres to Massasoit for them to do part of the $47 million project to renovate the life science building and the liberal arts building. But I'm here tonight to say this half acre of land that I am talking about is not the 5.5 acres. We really need a community center. We need many community centers in this city. Last week, Governor Baker just announced $70 million for summer learning programs. The federal government has sent money out for community organizations and community centers. The state is investing in these types of models. And in the end, and I think it's going to be really successful. I mean, there are community groups that are interested in participating. Citizens are on board 100%. I ran for office just last year, knocked on doors, and not one person that I spoke with was against a community center at the conference center. There is interest. We have a mayor who has a law degree and a business degree. He's going to speak to you tonight. He's in support of this. It's a doable thing. It's a way. We have one of the, and I don't have to tell you this, but I will just in closing. We have one of the poorest cities in Massachusetts. We have children. I ran a clothing giveaway this weekend, and I had a little 8-year-old boy on a bicycle come over and was so excited to get used sneakers and said, "Do I have to pay for these?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Is all this clothing for free?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Oh my gosh, I have to go get my family." And he went back and he brought 5 families and their kids to come and get clothing. We have a lot of poor people that have no vacations and nowhere to go. And the more we can invest in giving people these types of community access to bettering their lives, the more likely these children and these adults are going to be able to get off of social supports, be able to support themselves, understand that we as a city government care about them, and we're there for them, and we're there to help them. So I am going to be hosting 2 Saturday meetings that we're going to announce in the coming weeks on the site to talk to the community members in person, and a series of Zooms. And I'm just going to close out the way I started. For me, this is about consensus building, communication, getting together as a team, and bringing home something for Brockton that we deserve. The East Side needs it. Brockton needs it. I know we can do it. And I'm just so excited to be here with all of you, and the prospect of having this community center, it's just teed up for us. And I hope we can get on board, but I want you to know, the Speaker Mariano, the Speaker of the House, knows that this is my #1 priority. I've made it clear to him that getting a conference center is my #1 priority. I've made it clear to the Ways and Means Chairman. He seemed very receptive to the idea of being able to get this conference center for a community center. From the House's perspective, I'm feeling really confident, and I'm not giving up. I'm gonna, and the thing is, if we want to circumvent Mass General Law to sell land, this is state law. There's onerous state law that lays out how DCAM can sell land. The only other way to sell land is through special legislation. So if we're going to file special legislation, myself being the state rep for the district, and it has to be a voice vote. You have to have a voice vote. I've made it clear to the Speaker of the House, the Ways and Means Chairman, my delegation, and every single member of the legislature that I spoke with about this, that unless we can get this conference center for the community, I am going to oppose legislation that comes through. And then once it gets to the city, if you guys decide that you want to sell it, and go along to what you do that. But I am in earnest effort trying to deliver this parcel of land, this half acre and the building, to the city for all of you in your wisdom and your caring and your love for the city to, as a team effort, get that ball across the finish line, across the goalpost, or football terminology that I don't understand, and to make that touchdown for the city of Brockton. So I'm here to have a conversation with you, maybe dispel some of the false rumors that are being put out about this project, and hopefully start coalition building around this. So thank you so much for your time. I want to thank so much the City Councilor Thompson for putting this forward. I know he has a super kind heart and is really interested in the betterment of the city, and I look forward to getting each and every one of you on the team for this community center. And I'm ready to take questions, unless you'd like the mayor to speak now.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to add anything before we go to questions?
Sure, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you, Rep. Thank you. First, I want to thank Rep. Dubois. I want to thank Rep. Cassidy and Leader Claire Cronin. The House budget has just come out. Again, it looks very promising for the city of Brockton. Now, the Senate has to look at it, and then Governor Baker, but thank you for what you're doing, and we have a really great delegation. We meet every other Tuesday in the GAI room, the three reps, Senator and myself. Councilor Thompson was on 2 of those meetings as well. Just to kind of turn back time a little bit, I went in, and as soon as I became mayor, I traveled in and testified at a joint committee about this matter. I support this, the old Christos, coming back to the city of Brockton. I support that. But the caveat is, we have to know what the price point's going to be. If we can get it for $1, remember, some of us that were serving together at that time, the Ganley building, we sold for $1 to DCAM. And, it's thankfully coming to fruition now. But we had a meeting, 2 different meetings with the Massasoit folks, actually 3 meetings. One was in my office pre-COVID, and then we've had 2 Zooms about this matter as well. I took a tour with Bill Mitchell, with the acting president, with Sarah Units, and with Jim Plouffe, and Jim couldn't be here tonight. He had a family matter. Jim Plouffe's professional opinion is this building is in turnkey condition. It's ready to go, except for the roof. The roof will have to be replaced. It's kind of reached its mature life. I then was able to ask Councilor Thompson and the rep if they'd like to take a tour as well, and I know they did. At the end of the day, Mike Thomas, superintendent, and myself are working to retrofit the Goddard School to make that a community, some type of community endeavor, much like North Middle School was going to be before COVID, and we had to change the plan. But I also know that on the east side of Brockton, across from Caffrey, we can have an intergenerational that's going to meet the needs of our youth. They're all hurting now because of COVID. They're a different generation right now, emotionally, physically, financially. So if we can do that, and the price point is right, to me, in my humble opinion, it's a no-brainer. But I also know that Massasoit needs to make X amount of money. $3 million is what they're saying on the sale. The real estate market right now is so high in the city of Brockton and the Commonwealth. In my humble opinion, they'll be able to do that. But there are some variables, but I do think that if we can make this an intergenerational like the town of Randolph does, now this is a brand new one, but with federal money coming in, I've already met with Troy many times to talk about this. If DCAM comes back to the city of Brockton and says, yes, you can reacquire this property for X, acquire this property for X amount, I'm going to try to jump on it and come back before you to see if we can authorize that. I think that we can use it for many, many different reasons. Number one, much like what Councilor Cardoza talks about the youth of Brockton. So of course we have the Boys and Girls Club, we have, we have the YMCA, we have Moses' wonderful group that's helping the youth. But on the east side of Brockton, there is a dire need. There is a dire need. But I also know that we would all be naive if we couldn't understand the fact that we need to get that on the tax base as well. We need that area, which is now just a parking lot, to be redeveloped, to beautify that area, to provide amenities, not just for the ward and not just for the east side, but for the city of Brockton. So there are some variables in place. The council and I mean, the former councilor and I have talked many times about this matter. I've been very, very adamant with the Massasoit folks that, you know, we need to be able to hear back from DCAM. Senator Brady has been working for probably 2 months now on that. So I'm just telling you tonight that if they come back to us and it makes financial sense, and it makes common sense, and it makes business sense, and it just makes sense for Brockton and the youth and the seniors, I'll respectfully come back for you and ask for your support on that endeavor as well. But we don't have that clarity quite yet at this time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and thank you again, Councilor, for inviting me tonight.
All right, so Councilor Thompson and then Councilor Azak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Mayor and Representative Dubois for being here tonight. I know both of you are, you know, passionate about the city of Brockton and developing a community center in our city to provide a different community space for people to gather and enjoy each other's companies and talk about important issues. And I agree with both of you. I think the city of Brockton does require community space for people to gather and to, you know, to discuss different issues and, you know, for a different variety of reasons. I think we also, and I look forward to continuing the conversation about the Christos lot in general. The development of that lot is going to be the linchpin of the east side. That is the gateway to Brockton coming from the east side, and I believe the proper development of that lot is in the highest interest in Brockton. I know, Mr. Mayor, we're going to have another conversation about that, and I hope soon we can come out with a plan for that lot. We will be zoning that lot, so I think the discussion of how we zone it will be happening soon, and so that the public can understand, you know, what we envision for that lot in the near future. So I am not opposed to a community center per se. My concern with this area is twofold. Number one is the cost of acquisition. So I know, and that's really one of the main factors that's up in the air right now. Speaking with Senator Brady and some information from him, he states that DCAM is unable to give us this property for a nominal fee because it's not being used for direct public use, or it won't be used for affordable housing. Now, I know, Representative Dubois, you say that you're trying to put special legislation forward for that sale to happen at a nominal fee.
If you'd like.
Sorry, say again?
I think I could answer that if you'd like.
Yeah.
DCAM runs by regulations, and their regulations may state that. So if we were to put a bill through to sell the parcel of land, then it would go to DCAM, and DCAM could and could not do certain things based on their rules and regulations. But like the 5 examples I've given you tonight, through our legislation, so not regulations, through legislation, we can, and as you can see through the 5 examples, and I can get you more, give land for a nominal fee, which is $1, $100, to city municipalities. They do that a lot. Sometimes they do it to nonprofits and businesses. So it is possible. So I think there's just a confusion on, are we going to try to get the conference center after we move the bill to sell the land and it's in DCAM's authority, or are we going to try to get the conference center through legislation while it's still in the House and the Senate and up there? And that's what I'm proposing because, you know, as a state rep, that's my job.
Right, so that's the route I understand that you're moving forward with. Is that legislation still on the floor? From my understanding, you withdrew that, or?
So last session, Senator Brady filed a bill that didn't include some provisions that I required, like having the mayor be in consultation and try to get the Christos lot for the city.
Just
so
specifically about this property.
Yes, so that happened last session. He filed the bill. I did not co-sponsor it. I was going to hold it up, and I did hold it up because of those two things. And then during this budget, I filed an amendment to give the conference center to the city in the thoughts that we could just handle that half acre. And then I know you're working really hard on the zoning because it's zone C2 now to make it C5 so we can move forward with that sale. So I thought we could split it up. And then I spoke with someone in the chairman's office, and he said that he is super willing to talk to me about this moving forward, but they weren't really inclined to take it up as an outside section in the budget, which I can understand because it isn't often that land is granted through the budget in an outside section. That would be not really a normal way for that land to transfer through legislation. And I kind of filed it just so they knew how important it was to me, so I could have a meeting with the speaker and a discussion with the speaker and a meeting with the Ways and Means chairman to stress how important it was to me. And I did withdraw it because, you know, why force a vote when you know it's not going to work?
Right. So if this land is to, if this building is to come to us, it wouldn't be through any legislation, it would be through DCAM policy, right?
No, so there are two options. I am working on getting this land. I have a draft legislation that I can share with you that has not been filed. Out of respect for Senator Brady, I want to make sure that we're both on board with the legislation. And typically, the senator will file a piece of legislation to sell land on the Senate side, and the respecting House member will file legislation on the House side that's similar to sell land. So I'm working with Senator Brady to get to a point where we both agree on the language so we can do it as a team. But I am suggesting that the conference center be granted to the city through legislation, and in that same legislation, the other 5.5 acres of land be put out through a proper bidding process.
So you want to make this part of that other special legislation that's contemplating the sale of the Crystals lot as a whole?
Yes, but nothing is filed now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we'll come back to that one in a second. Secondly, so the acquisition costs is one of my main concerns, but then it's also about maintenance and upkeep of this building. I know, Mr. Mayor, you stated that you went through a walkthrough with Mr. Plouffe, and you call it turnkey. I went through a walkthrough with Massasoit and their building personnel, and the list I got of repairs that would be required that they designated as priority A, priority B, priority C. Some of the just priority A and B issues alone raised it to about $1 million, and that was in 2013. I just think there'd probably be additional costs, as we stated, and I think one of the agenda items before, the maintenance costs, labor costs, material costs have all skyrocketed. So I just want to make sure that Brockton, we have priorities with our public safety building, the redevelopment or renovation of Brockton High. I know we're looking at our water infrastructure and a lot of the other issues that I think, are higher priority in my opinion. And I just want to make sure that if there is money to spend, that we maintain our focus on our highest priorities. And I think this council needs a larger conversation about if the city of Brockton, if this is the right location for a community center. Maybe there are other locations that we can look at. My other concern, other than the acquisition costs and maintenance costs, is operational costs. What's it going to cost the city of Brockton to operate this convention center? And then under the how much is it going to cost, I guess that would be one leg. The other leg would be the overall development of the Crystals lot. We're looking at rezoning this area. Does cutting off this piece of land, does it devalue the overall development? I don't know. But that would be a concern I think we need to discuss, that if, we have some professional offices or other different offices or whatever we ultimately goes into that area. The fact that there's a community center abutting it, does that potentially devalue the project as a whole? I don't know, but that's a thought and a concern. And then just lastly, you stated that you would potentially hold up the other legislation of getting an the special legislation to sell the Christos lot, and get that out for an RFP so that we could, there can be developmental bids on that lot, and then ultimately the overall development of that Christos lot. And I think I mentioned before how important I believe it is to develop that lot. I have concern about your statement that you would hold up the whole project if we do not get the Christos Convention Center for $1.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, please.
I would love to. So, last session, the reason I held up the legislation was twofold. Number one, I wanted the mayor to be in consultation with the president of Massasoit to the commissioner. Consultation could be an email to the mayor saying, I'm going to sell the land to be a food transfer station, which is what DCAM suggested to planning, and at least he would know that it was coming. Or they could be earnest and forthright and actually bring him and the president of Massasoit in to consult with them. If we had passed this 2 years ago when it was proposed, I did not co-sponsor that bill, we would have had an interim president who doesn't, or president that's gone, is moving back to her home state of California. She was here for 1.5 years, or an interim president who isn't even the president of Massasoit deciding with no elected official who 6 acres of land at a prime entry spot, to your point, to the city was going to be sold to. And DCAM called planning and said, I have a great idea for you. Why don't we put a food transfer recycling center there? All the truck traffic, the terrible it would have been terrible for our retail area. Now, the mayor has said that he would fight that tooth and nail, and I believe that that wouldn't happen because you're working on making sure that it's zoned correctly so we wouldn't have that. Not that I'm against food recycling, but not in a thriving retail area, because just so everyone is aware, maybe in comparison to Boston or Weymouth, this isn't a thriving retail zone. But for Brockton, that Eastside Plaza is thriving. The people that own it have plans for out back. They're going to be developing. People are fighting for each other to have leases in that building. So to your point, I agree. There are wonderful things that could happen there. So I was insistent that we have some elected official from Brockton have some sort of say, in at least consultation with the DCAM commissioner on the future of that parcel of land. And I think that that's justified. That's what happens in other bills. I could bring them to you to show you that that happens. And so those are the two things that really held me up. There was also no public comment. They exempted public comment. So to be clear, DCAM can sell this land right now. There's a Mass General Law process for the sale of DCAM land, but it's onerous, and it requires public meetings, and it requires a lot of DCAM to do. And if we want to make it easier on everyone, we can file legislation. And I was elected, as you were, to represent this district that we're talking about, and the people that I represent would like a conference center there. They would like to know that there's an elected official that has some responsibility about what that parcel becomes. And so that's why I held that up. And so unless we're going to be transparent and honest in the future legislation, I'm going to hold that up, because I don't want my name or anyone's name on something that turns out to be an albatross or a white elephant. So what I'm saying is I don't want to, and the only way I would ever do that is if I thought it wasn't in the best interest of the city. And the mayor can talk about the cost to operate, but what I am proposing is getting the conference center for a nominal fee, which is $100, $100, maybe 100,000. I don't even think it would go that much. If you look at the examples, often they do it for free, to the city. And then if you guys decided you didn't want a conference center there, the way the bill I'm proposing is being put in, you could sell it. I don't want that. I hope that you wouldn't want that. but I'm really trying to make a win for Brockton, like when the city granted the buildings of the Cape Verdean Association, or when the city granted that building the Boys and Girls Club is in for free to them. I mean, this is a win. So that's my answer. I don't know if the mayor has answers.
Yeah, I also, no disrespect, Council President has been participating in the meetings with the state delegation every other Tuesday as well. I'm sorry about that, Council. I'm not an engineer, but what I was told at the first meeting with Massasoit, that it was a tear down. You have to rip it down, is what they said to me. I know some folks that are on the Massasoit Foundation, and they said, no, Bob, that's not true, so take a tour. So I brought Jim Plouffe with me. I brought Rob May with me as well. In Jim's opinion, that it's structurally sound. He called it turnkey. He said, but the roof is a problem. Massasoit, and there was a gentleman, 2 different gentlemen from their facilities walked around with us. They didn't provide us anything. But I do think what you said, Council, is 100% accurate. I'm here to say that if it makes sense, I'll come back before you. If it doesn't make sense, then it doesn't make sense. But it's not on our level right now. It's not City Council and Mayor. It's Beacon Hill. And, you know, we have dedicated people on Beacon Hill. I do think we would have to figure out some of the other parameters, like what are the carrying costs? Exactly what you said, Councilor. You know, so acquisition is only one endeavor. And then, you know, what is electrical cost? Or, I mean, there's a lot. You know, we're self-insured as well, so we have to think of those things. I just think that, you know, if this is something that we can get and it makes dollar sense to rebuild something like this, wouldn't make sense. So, again, it's premature, I think, from our local level, City of Brockton and Mayor and Council, but I do know that Michelle, State Rep, is working diligently to see if it can come to fruition, as is Mike Brady, the Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just leave it to this, that I know we'll have a larger conversation about the Christos lot and the development of that lot. I think a lot of this comes down to DCAM and what their interests are in this area. And so, again, a community center would be great for our city. As you said, Mr. Mayor, it just has to make sense. And if I could lean one way, I would lean towards the full development of this area. But we'll just see how that plays out. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Dubois, thank you. I appreciate your time and your effort in all of this. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Move to recommend favorably.
Surely.
There's been a motion made. Did it receive a second yet?
Actually, I
withdraw my motion.
I just wanted to say something to the mayor. We're hearing tonight that, and this is not directed at Councilor Thompson, but we're hearing tonight that we're going to rezone this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And I would respectfully say that if a department head under you has some plans going or is offering some zoning amendments, there are 4 councilors at large, and I think it's time to let everybody in on whatever is going on, and I know you feel that way.
I was one of you, right? I used to be an at-large, absolutely. I know that Rob May, the city planner, has met with Council Thompson a few times. I haven't been privy to those. We do have a coffee this week, the councilor and I, but absolutely, as I've said, I mean, there's a ward councilor, and then there's 4 other ward councilors vis-a-vis the councilor at large, so everybody should be engaged, all 11.
I think that's important. All colleagues know what's going on. The other thing is, councilors, this is just a resolve to discuss. We don't have a vote.
I was after Councilor Thompson to speak, but
I understand that. I'm just trying to frame all the discussion we're having, which is premature, because this is not a vote to adopt an intergenerational center. It's just to discuss the possibility. So I just want us to keep that in mind, and go ahead, Councilor Raisik.
That's exactly what I was going to say, that this is actually just a resolve in front of us. But thank you for all your hard work, Representative Dubois, and I know Senator Brady has been very involved. And when I was council president, I was privy to some of the meetings, and we were at Beacon Hill with the other state representatives, Rep. Cronin and at the time, and Rep. Cassidy. So I know you've all been working really hard on this. So I'm not going to repeat everything. The mayor touched on a lot of my concerns, as well as Councilor Thompson. But what nobody really mentioned is I just want to make sure that our relationship with Massasoit really doesn't get destroyed in this, because they are coming downtown. I want to make sure, I was on the real estate committee when you were chair, Rep. Dubois, and we signed over that building for $1, and we were hoping we were getting a college collaborative, and then that went, and then that didn't happen. So I know they're supposed to be coming into this building. I just want to make sure that we keep our relationship, as best as we can, and do what's best for Brockton. The other concern that Councilor Thompson brought up is that I don't want to see this lot get devalued. So if we do take this small acreage, I don't want to see it get devalued and then nobody want it. So just keep these in mind. It is a resolve, and I love that there's communication, that we're talking about this, and that, it is in Ward 5, but it affects the whole city,
Oh,
so.
all the kids and all the people.
And nobody wants to, see it. We want to see tax revenue as well for the city of Brockton. I just wanted to state those things to you. I know we talk about community centers, and as the mayor mentioned, we offered North Junior High last year, which our superintendent was kind enough to allow that to happen at North. What is going on, and this isn't part of this, so I don't want it to become a huge conversation, but that empty school that I think, is it the Payne that's on Quincy Street?
I don't remember.
I don't.
Shaw
Shaw
School.
School. It's
The
the
Shaw
Shaw
School.
School, but that building's been empty forever, and,
It wouldn't be me to answer.
like I said, but we have empty buildings in the city. We'd like to see.
First of all, thank you, Councilor. The relationship with Massasoit, one of the things that we said on day one, after President Glickman left, is let's turn the page. I'll tell you, I was a little disappointed when we tried to do a COVID testing site over at Massasoit. We were told, no, we don't want those people over there. That just made me livid. But we've turned the page, and the relationship is there. Bill Mitchell, I was on the selection committee. I was a non-voting member of the new president. I didn't get to participate in the vote, but, the students and the staff, this is a win-win for Brockton. We need to continue that. In terms of the Shaw, we actually took a tour of that recently as well with Dr. Cobbs and Ken Thompson from facilities. I think it's in really, really terrible, terrible shape. Much like the Whitman School on Management Street where I went, it's in terrible shape, the Howard as well. So none of our buildings that have been reverted back to the city council and the city from the school committee are really up to stuff right now in terms of rehab and renovation. They're really in tough shape, and much like what we learned at the State House building at the fairgrounds, unfortunately when they're vacant, they're prone to potential fire hazards as well.
That's true.
And I'll be very brief. I just want to add that the new president of Massasoit, to my delight, started his career in Parks and Recreation and went back to school to become a president of to do this type of work that he does. So I think that he has it in his heart to do these types of things. I feel really confident about it. I had the best relationship with Dr. Wall before. It was wonderful. I think he would have been on board, but I haven't talked to him because all this happened after the Life Science Center fell apart. So I do have a really positive feeling, and I definitely do not want anything to threaten the downtown collaborative and the offices there, and I know that the mayor is working on MOU, and so that stuff is moving forward, and I share your concern. We don't want to ruin anything for our kids.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr.
You're
Chairman?
welcome, Councilor Rodriguez.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad you touched on the 4 councilors at large. Because we often forget that I know that the ward councilors, do a great job in the city, but that there are 4 additional councilors that sit on this body that also get plenty of beating in the community, because the community doesn't know that my wall begins here and ends here. They look at it as a city council sitting on the city council, especially some of us that deal with some of these other communities that we deal with. So we get the pummeling like you wouldn't believe. So I'm glad our president brought that up, to the fact that once we are moving into a discussion, that we're not forgotten as well, because I think we play an important part. I happen to disagree with what Councilor Thompson was saying in terms of A community center. I know that's not what we're discussing here today, but when the boys soccer team 2 years ago won the state championship, we had a gala dinner at the conference center for them, and it was a beautiful place. It was all decorated in red and black, and it was it was like Hollywood-like, you know. And that was just 2 years ago. But I was also told, as mayor, another 6 months or so from that date, that the conference center is in deplorable conditions. And forgetting the fact that I was just there celebrating the boys soccer team victory, a couple months later, it didn't fall apart that quickly. So I was actually told that it was going to cost us over $2 million. And I think, Bob, remember, we talked about this in terms of the Shaw Center is going to cost us $2 million, and if we get this other one here, it's going to cost us $2 million, then we might as well just put at least a $2 million in one basket so that we don't have a bunch of moving parts. So when you look at the city of Brockton, a city of 100,000 plus people, we're looking at two facilities that both of them together do not handle more than close to 900 people in a city of 100,000 plus people. So what's wrong with having a facility where you've got the Shaw Center on one side of the city and you've got another site on the opposite side of the city to handle things that cities have? Conferences, you know, some weddings, some boys soccer celebrations, some football celebration, basketball celebration, or whatever celebration we can come up with. Because I know that there's a lot of us in this city that want to dial back the city to the days of the 1940s, 1930s. We're not there. This is 2021 and moving forward. We've got a high school that's alive and well, a bunch of kids doing a lot of things, and yet we don't have a facility in the city that we can actually hold an event. The mayor had to hold his inaugural event in Randolph because we didn't have at the time a facility that can handle some people in the city, and that's embarrassing, really. It was embarrassing for me to go to Randolph to inaugurate the mayor of the city of Brockton. You know, this is the largest city south of Boston.
And to your point, instead of it being or, so we do the police station or we do the community center, I like to see things as and, because we can do both. And so I agree with you. I think it's possible. And I apologize for not reaching out more to the 4 at-large counselors. There was no, I will make sure that I have conversations with you and each and every one of you. It wasn't any slight or meaning disrespect. So thank you.
At least I didn't take it as such, but I'm just saying as far as a recommendation for future steps that you remember us as well, because, you know, with all due respect to my ward colleagues, you know, sometimes they're not the best visionary out of the entire council. And as I mentioned a little while ago, with all due respect, we all have one vote. And when we're sitting here deciding on it, it doesn't matter what side of town it is, it's votes that count, and our votes count as well. And I want to make sure, though, that we do what we can. To be honest with you, do I want to see apartment buildings in that land in my ward as well, by the way? Because we have all the wards, you know. Do I want to see that? Yeah, sure. But you know what? I also want to see a conference center. I want to, you know, I was not against, you know, even, you know, the development going to a hotel or whatever, so as long as we had a conference center so that we can hold conventions, do some of the other things that cities do. And I think this is one of the things that we have to move forward thinking, again, we're not South Avon. We are the city of Brockton, and I think we need to think as such progressively. You know, we don't have to go all the way over, but at least think about it. All we're asking is another convention hall somewhere that we can actually hold another event in this city. I don't think that's actually a lot to ask for, and I think we should do whatever we can to pressure the state to make sure that they think of us, city government, as partners in this, because, and with all due respect to Massasoit, I don't have an issue with Massasoit. If they're refusing to go into this building downtown, I got plenty of people that would go into that beautiful building. So if they don't want to go into it, I'm sure we can come up with quite a few people to go into it.
I will say that during Virginia Glickman's tenure as president, she was floating that trying to pit I think the community center versus coming downtown, and it gave me a lot of sleepless nights because I want the downtown to happen, and I have a lot of respect for Representative Cassidy, and I don't want to mess anything up in his district, as I don't want anything messed up in my district, and I know he feels the same way. I had a lot of scariness about that, and since she's left, at our last meeting, it was reported that that was never the case, that a staff member from Massasoit said that they thought it was strategy on former President Glickman's part to think that if she said that if you didn't sell the conference center, we weren't going to go downtown, that would push our hand. And you know, as Brockton does, that just gets our ear up, and we're just even angrier about it. But they've made it clear that the two are not connected. That has been made clear to us. So.
I don't see, honestly, Mr. Chairman, an issue in terms of separating the two pieces of property. You know, if it's 6 acres of land, you know, take 1 or 2 or whatever it is for the good of the community, and then they can sell the other 4 with absolutely no issues. And chances are, most of us, again, that's in my ward, and we would support that in terms of having a facility to benefit the children and the seniors of this community. A lot of communities are moving towards that direction. There's absolutely nothing wrong with us doing something like that as support. So I look forward into supporting this, and I can speak for my ward councilor colleague, Councilor Farwell, since we're in that ward as well, and Councilor Mendes, who's also in my ward, Ward 5. And all these other wards that we have in this city, that would be something that we would support. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Mendes is recognized.
Yes, thank you so much, Representative Dubois. So that is my district, clearly, because I live on the east side, so I am very interested on what happens with that property, and I'm very excited and looking forward to all that you're doing and putting in the effort to try to acquire that property to the city of Brockton. If we were to receive it as a nominal donation to the city, would we be able to apply to some grants in order to be able to rehab and renovate the property? In that regards, do you know of any available grants that would allow us to?
So there's a lot of money floating around since COVID. I think the one thing that after COVID, what we realized is the value of large community space. And like I said, the President of the Senate is making this a priority, mental health, community health centers that connect community members with services that they need. And so I believe, yes, there's tons of money from the 2 rescue acts that have come down to the city of Brockton and the state. But I am really hoping that we can get the building for a nominal fee. So to Councilor Thompson's point, it doesn't cost too much to be a burden, and then we can focus our resources on making sure that, it is turnkey, but there are things that need to be fixed, that those get done. That's, I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you so much. And I do think that a community center is much needed in this city, especially with all the needs. So thank you for all your work. Thank you.
Okay. Anywhere, Councilor Nicastro.
Thank you. Good evening, Rep. Dubois and Mayor Sullivan. Thank you for being here. This issue's been around for a while, and I want to see it resolved positively to benefit our community. So I brought the assessor's map. The Commonwealth owns a total of 6.75 acres in this area. The conference center sits on 1.2 acres, not a half. Okay? But if you deduct that 1.2 acres, we're left with 5.55 acres to sell. All right? I understand, and I think it's important that at least $3 million be generated. I understand that's what Massasoit needs to finish a life science building on their campus and to equip classrooms in the downtown building that they are committed to doing. I want to see that happen. Massasoit Community College, an education there benefits many of our children, and it's important that we support it all that we can. But looking at the size of the land, I don't see why we couldn't do both things. And perhaps trying to restructure something with DCAMs so that, as long as they net the $3 million on the open market, then they give us the conference center. It seems to me a compromise position may work. Now, that's just me talking from Ward 4 on the other side of Massasoit's campus, but, and I do take what Councilor Thompson says very seriously. It is his ward, but it seems to me that it's possible, just as we sit here talking about it this evening. I think having a community center on that side of town would be wonderful. Unfortunately, I don't see room for a pool, but anything is possible these days, especially if we went up a bit and did a pool on the first floor. Our community needs places for our children and all ages of our families to go and to relax, to recreate. And so I'd like to see us continue talking about this. Please keep us apprised, and I will do what I can.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? I've lost track of who made the motion to favorably recommend and who seconded it, so could we go through that again?
There was no second on my motion, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so motion to favorably recommend by Councilor Lally, seconded by Councilor Thompson, and
Just on the motion, real quick,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Rep. Dubois, I just wanted to make sure I clarified one thing. The Cape Verdean Association was actually purchased. It was not given by the city to anybody. So
I'm sorry. Just like the size of the acreage, I was a little lost.
I just want to.
Thank you very much.
I just want to make sure that that was.
What facility, was it for a lower fee? I thought,
No, it was purchased from a developer back
near
in
Harrington, I thought.
back in 1999.
My mistake.
No,
Thank you.
just that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that we clarify that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
all right, if there's no further discussion on the favorable recommendation, all those in favor? All those opposed? You weren't in opposition, Councilor Lally.
I was.
You were?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay, let's do that again then. All in favor? All opposed? One opposed. All right. Councilors, Mr. Vega is here. Any objection if we have him step forward and we read that item so that he doesn't have to hear us drone on another item? I don't hear any objection, so would the clerk please call the agenda item number 3?
Appointment of George Vega of 40 Goldfinch Drive to the Library Board of Trustees for a 3-year term ending April 2024. Invited George Vega.
Good evening, Mr. Vega. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for your willingness to serve, and if you'd like to make a brief statement, please do so.
I'm very excited to help Brockton in any way. I have a long connection with libraries as an educator and as a writer. Recently finished a residency at the Boston Public Library as its writer in residence, and I just see an amazing opportunity with the Brockton Library to do more for our young people, for our older folks, and for the city as a whole.
Any questions for Mr. Vega?
Move to recommend. Oh, never mind.
Okay, well, let's have the
gonna
motion.
second.
Favorable recommendation, who seconded? All right, now on the motion, Councilor Nicastro.
Thank you. I'm glad to see you tonight.
Thank you. And I apologize for being late this evening. I was making slime with my 6th grader when I got the phone call.
Okay. You wrote a beautiful letter to Mayor Sullivan, which was provided to us, and this part really moved me, because you said in writing to apply to be on this Board of Trustees, libraries to me are deeply tied to the identities of the communities they support, and when operating at their best, serve as beacons, bringing together residents of all backgrounds and ages, allowing them to see themselves in an entirely new light as historians, scientists, artists, and more. You're spot on. You're spot on. And I think it would be a pleasure to have you serving on our Board of Trustees. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Any other questions? If not, we have a motion made and properly seconded to recommend favorably. All those in favor? All those opposed? Recommended favorably. The actual confirmation vote is Monday evening, Mr. Vega. So,
Thank you very much.
thank you again. We now return to item number 9.
Resolved that the mayor, director of Board of Health, and the chief financial officer come before the Finance Committee to discuss establishment of a health department consistent with the city's adoption of the Mass General Law, Chapter 111, subsection 26A through E, and to inform the council of any planning and financial considerations for implementation of said health department. Invited Mayor Robert Sullivan, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, Megan Bridges, City Solicitor, Shannon Resnick, Legislative Counsel, and Dr. Eno Montesser, Executive Health Officer.
Mr. Chairman?
Councilor Ianieri.
If I might, I know this item is before us this evening, but I also know that when you look at the resolve, City Councilor Tina Cardozo had placed it before us, and I know that she is out of state for the next few weeks, and I just thought that it would probably be appropriate in respect to her, because I know she'd want to be here to have discussion. And you know as well as I do, Mr. Mayor, we had discussion about something this not too long ago when we were here on the council, you know what I'm saying? So I'd just like to make a motion that we postpone it until probably the finance meeting in, I think the last one probably in May.
Let me just check the calendar.
The mayor doesn't mind, does he?
No.
You want to get home early?
Well, may I suggest that you might want to go to Monday, June 7th?
That works too, but I think, in respect to her, I think it's,
Is that
you know,
budget time?
When are you doing budget, Mr. President? Do you know
That's
yet?
budget.
I was going to confer with you about budgets, Mr. Mayor, so.
Okay, because Troy and I are committed to getting you the books earlier again this year.
Excellent.
So we can talk about that, Mr. President.
Okay. So there's been a motion made and properly seconded to postpone this item to FinCom on June 7th. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor? All those opposed? Postponed.
thank you,
Mr. Mayor,
Thank you.
please extend
Good evening.
thanks to everyone who came.
Thank you.
Any further business, Councilor Razak?
I was going to request a moment of councilors' recognition.
Please do.
Thank you. I would just like to remind everybody at home that Brockton Cultural and Tourism will be meeting this Thursday, May 6th at 6 p.m. at the North Baptist Church, which is located at 899 North Main Street. The meeting starts at 6 p.m. All are welcome. Looking forward to, I know part of the planning is for the anniversary of Summerfest this year, and there are discussions of some of the cultural events and that are happening in our city. The other announcement that I would like to make to everyone at home is that Brockton Public Schools is offering a vaccine clinic for all Brockton Public School students 16 years old and over, with their parents, guardians, or whoever accompanies them. The clinic is this week. It's May 6th and 7th. It's at Brockton High School. You do need to pre-register, so please go on to the Brockton Public Schools website, which is bpsma.org, and you can get all the information there, and I hope everyone takes advantage of it. With everything going on with COVID, I have to thank our superintendent, our school committee members, our mayor, that, you know, we're vaccinating our youth where a lot of cities and towns aren't able to do that. So that I hope everybody takes advantage of it. Bring your family with you. Bring your, you know, of course, adult guardians with you. They will get vaccinated as well. That's this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Ianieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to remind the Ordinance Committee, we're meeting here tomorrow evening at 6:30 p.m. That's tomorrow evening, May the 4th at 6:30 p.m. And I also want to remind the Ad Hoc Committee that will be meeting here on Thursday, which would be the 6th, and that's after the public safety meeting. But we'll be here at 6:15 p.m. on Thursday, so we can pick up where we left off from our last meeting. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
Yes.
Councilor Nicastro.
Thank you. Thank you. The Standing Committee on Public Safety will be meeting this week on Thursday at 5:30 here in the council chambers. It should be a short meeting. There is only one matter on the agenda. Thank you.
You're welcome, Councilor. Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to inform the community that if For those who have some time, there will be a community cleanup of the Salisbury Park next to Pliff School off of Crescent Street. That'll be held this Saturday, May 8th, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So for those who want to pitch in and help clean our community, I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else? Councilors, very briefly, we are proceeding with the upgrade to the technology in the council chamber, audio, video, and other items, and I'll have more information for you in the next couple of weeks. So, no further business. Meeting adjourned.
Can you guys make sure you shut all your lamps off?